Hello everyone, back to another episode, or I should say, back to another live stream of exposing D&D 5e creatures CRs with me, Andrew. Been an eventful few weeks here with all the monsters we've been deconstructing and some of the requests, such as seeing Strahd and what else we got here? Mind Flayers and a bunch of other monsters as well. It's been a fun time, and I've gotten a few more requests. One person in particular wanted to see all the core spawns from Eberron's Guide to Wildmount, so I've got those stretched out for the next couple weeks, as well as a few others that were suggested, such as the Spirit Troll, the Magmin, and what else do we have here? The Tromokratis from Mystic Odysseys of Theros, and then also the Ancient Void Dragon, or at least a Void Dragon in general, from the Tome of Beasts by Kobold Press. Now, if you've been watching the shorts and anything from the Creature Codex, like for instance, this week will be the War Machine Golem, you know these things can get a little out of hand. And with that, let's jump into our first monster and take a look at the Core Spawn Worm. Core Spawn Worm, and that is from Eberron's Guide to Wildmount. So let me go ahead and get to that. And we will jump right into this. Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. I don't know if I said Eberron by accident, but if I did, it's the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. So let me just fix my screens real quick. Shrink that up a little bit so I have more room on my tool and less room on the booklets here. And see if we can find the Core Spawn Worm. Core Spawn. Okay, Core Spawns are on page... looks like 285. So let's go to 286. Alright, sure enough, we have the Core Spawn family here. And we have a Crawler, the Emissary, the Seer, and the Worm. Isn't that a beautiful looking crazy monster? Alright, let's get a little zoomed in and take a look at the base stats of our Core Spawn Worm here. Alright, so we have a Gargantuan Aberration, which is chaotic evil. I wouldn't want it any other way. So we're going to go to Gargantuan for our Core Spawn Worm and start looking at its base stats, such as an 18 AC, followed up by 18 D8, or excuse me, 18 D20 for hit points, and followed up with 20 Constitution, and just for the heck of it, 8 Wisdom and 4 Charisma. It's not a pretty looking monster, that's for sure. Alright, we'll skip down right into the skills and traits area. So for traits, for skills, we see that we have 3 saving throws. One moment while I turn on my highlighter. We have 2 saving throws, Constitution and Wisdom. And because that falls in the range of 0 to 2, we're not going to bother updating our saving throws here. The Core Spawn technically doesn't get any bonuses from having just 2 saving throws. So next we will look at skills. It has Perception +4, don't care. Damage vulnerabilities, it's actually vulnerable to cold. That's curious. So let's see here. In my rules for vulnerabilities, we'll come down to my, come down here to some of the instructions and whatnot. Only use these features if the monster has 3+ conditions listed. So for the time being, we're going to not pay attention to the damage vulnerabilities. We're just going to ignore that for now because there's only one condition. If it was vulnerable to a bunch, we would probably throw that in right away. But because it's only cold, we will negate that for the time being. The same goes for damage immunities as well. Fire and Psychic, because there's only 2, we're not going to put in the damage immunities either. Now here's the interesting thing. I've come to a realization about this, and I'm going to probably clip this out and have it just on its own. Condition immunities. The Core Spawn is immune to the following conditions. And the interesting thing is that even though it can't be charmed or frightened, it's immune to it. and we don't take that into consideration when calculating the CR. So I have a feeling that if it's not if it's not grappled or restrained, and it's any other kind of condition immunity, it doesn't matter. So if someone is incapacitated, or they're poisoned, or what other condition immunities you can have here, it's not going to make a difference. Even if it's in an attack and it debilitates the targets, it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything to help with the CR, because being charmed is not really likely to last more than one round if it succeeds. The difference being is that usually grapples and restrains immediately happen upon an attack or some kind of other thing that the player has no control over. So when something is grappled or restrained, that condition is stuck there until they usually get out on their own one way or the other. So that's why I think that no matter what the attack does, if it has any kind of a condition besides grappled or restrained, there's no bonuses or negatives to the CR calculations. And that seems to be my logic, and I'm going to go with that. So we'll skip down to its CR rating of 15 and add that into the expected CRs. And that will help with other things that the monster can have. So skipping down into the trait section, we have illumination. The word sheds dim light in a 20-foot radius. Cool, doesn't matter here. Radiant mirror. If the worm takes radiant damage, each creature within 20 feet of it takes that damage as well. Okay. It's only radiant damage. So we're going to ignore that for now, unless it comes into play later. But because it doesn't give a direct average amount of damage, we probably won't be using this to calculate it anyways. And it's such a rare damage type, generally speaking, that you may not see this effect or this trait trigger all too often. So let's move on to Tunneler, and again, Tunneler doesn't matter for sake of building out the monster's CR. So we're going to skip past those, and we're going to come over here to its actions. Alright, our worm here has a multi-attack of 2 attacks, one with its barbed tentacles and one with its bite. So let's go ahead and come on over to our combat workspace here and start putting in some of this information. Somehow I lost my balancing. Alright, so the worm can make 2 attacks, one with its tentacle and one with its bite. So let's take a look at the barbed tentacle. Well, both the bite and the barbed tentacle have a 13 to hit. So let's go ahead and just modify that real quick. And then, sorry about the jumping there, people. Then we'll also take a look at how much damage the barbed tentacles is doing. So we will go ahead and add in our equal sign. No, that's a 0. And initially, we're going to have the monster deal 25.5 piercing damage because it's an odd number of d6s. So we got 25.5 for our first attack. And on top of that, the target is grappled. So this, again, kind of goes back to the idea of only grappled and restrained is the effect that the monster can give out. The condition that the monster can give out that is going to work initially. Characters can resist fears, can also resist being slept or other conditions, and that's why D&D doesn't count those when calculating CRs. So we'll come down here to the constrict ability and add that in to give our worm a +1 AC bonus. It's not really getting much to begin with right off the bat, only going from an 18 to a 19. Alright, back to the workspace here. We will now look at bite since we have everything from the barbed tentacles, which indicates more than one, but hey, whatever. So for our bite, we have +13 to hit. One target does 30.5 average points of damage. And do we do any more damage? Yes, we do. Alright, so we're initially going to do the 30.5 plus from the bite. If the target is large or smaller, it must succeed on a dex save or be swallowed. A swallowed creature is blinded and restrained, has total cover, blah blah blah, and takes 21 points of fire damage at the start of the worm's turns. Alright, so we're not going to add that damage in here. We're actually going to add in the swallow damage to another part of the traits section on the left side. And we just remember, it's 21 points of damage. So let's come over here and come on down to where I've added in swallow right here. The example is the Behir. All right, so our monster can do 21 points of damage per round after the target's been swallowed. Well, that's going to net an average of 14 points of damage. Is that correct? I wonder if that's actually correct because, yeah, all right. So we're taking B44, which is that number, times it by 2, and then dividing it by 3 because you can't have a creature swallowed on the first round of combat. They have to be bitten first. The damage starts on the next round of combat or when the player starts their turn. So we get 2 out of 3 rounds of combat dealing this damage, and because it's going to be, what, 21 to 42, and then divide that by 3, that's where we're getting the 14. Okay, so the damage is good there. Let's move back over to the workspace and then take a look at the rest of the bite. If the worm takes 30 points of damage, okay, so this is just about getting the person out or the target out that's been swallowed. So we don't really worry about anything here. So then what does our attack rounds look like? Well, first of all, let's add in the damage from the first 2 attacks for its multi-attack. So we will add in attack number 1 plus attack number 2, totaling us giving us a total of 56 points of damage, not including the swallow damage either, but that's added in through the traits on the left side of the screen. And we don't have to worry about legendary actions or lair actions because this monster isn't that powerful. So we'll skip right down to our rounds of combat, and we'll see straight up that we are just going to use rounds 1 through I hate it when I do that. Rounds 1 through 3 are just going to be the same. We're going to rinse, repeat. If I could click correctly, that would be fantastic. All right, so our monster has a full complement of attacks of 56 points of damage, plus the swallow damage as well. All right, so we're looking at, so far, a CR 14, and this should be a CR 15. I think what we're also missing is that the worm can have a... Let's see here. Let's double check the swallow, because I think there's no limit, because this is a gargantuan beast. Let's see here. A swallowed creature is blinded and restrained, has total cover, and offers other effects outside the worm, and takes 21 points of damage at the start of the worm's turn. All right, so it is the worm's turn. So then, yeah, the first time the bite goes off, it bites a target and then swallows it. And then once it's swallowed, the second round of combat, that's when the first 2 points of bite damage come into play. And then on top of that, we have the chance to bite something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take off the 21 here from the trait section and add it into the side, because I need to rework that a little bit, since we could technically bite again and then swallow again on round 2, and then on round 3 we have 2 targets in there dealing being dealt the fire damage. So that would be target 1 taking 1 and 2 rounds of fire damage, and then round 3, the second target would be starting their parts of fire damage. So in essence, we would then, let's put in attack 4 as the fire damage here, and we'll go 21 points there. And then on round 2, we will start to get some fire damage in here, and we will add in, let's see here, plus 21 points of damage here. And then round 3, we're going to have the 56 points of damage from the multi-attack again, plus we're going to have another 2 bits of fire damage. All right, this brings us up to an attack of the full attack of 77 points of damage for all the rounds of combat. And as we can see here, round 1, it's a little low, and then rounds 2 and 3, we start getting higher in damage here. Well, what else could be going on? Because at the moment, we are expecting a CR 15, and we have a CR 14 right across the board, as we see here from all of the final placements of our DCR and our OCR. Well, the best I can say is that this is a slightly overrated monster, because we only have 1 damage immunity excuse me, we only have 1 damage vulnerability, and we have 2 damage immunities, this isn't really going to make much of a difference. Now, if I were to throw in, just for the heck of it, resistance, excuse me, immunities, that moves up, that moves our monster up into already a CR 18. But if then we then click vulnerabilities, it brings it down even further. So that's why I'm saying this probably isn't correct. Having the monster deal with vulnerabilities and immunities, because it only has 1 condition for vulnerabilities and 2 conditions for damage immunities. The other thing could be that the worm's taking radiant damage. Each creature within 20 feet is also taking that damage, but we can't guarantee that there's going to be any damage for the radiant mirror. This might be where there was some confusion in making this a CR 15 monster, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a CR 14. So the core spawn worm is a CR 14 as far as I'm concerned, because we can't guarantee radiant damage is going to be applied. And once the team figures out that, oh, radiant damage is being reflected back to at least 2 players within 20 feet of the worm, they're going to stop using radiant damage right away. Alright, so core spawn worm, CR 14 as far as I'm concerned. It's an overrated monster. Alright, let me go and take a note of that, since I have the information already written out. Core spawn worm. Alright, so we found, what was it? Let's go back to my notes here. Okay, 14's across the board. 14. Overrated. Radiant mirror damage may have been applied, but not certain. Hey, Vendary. Not much, just went over the core spawn worm from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. As far as I'm concerned, it's an overrated monster at only CR 14, so it's not too terribly low, but couldn't find a way to bump it up to that CR 15. Just it seems to be a little overrated. How you doing, Vandary? Yourself? And do you have any monster recommendations before I get into the next one? Because I just finished the core spawn worm, and I was probably going to go into the spirit troll next. Alright, while that's going on, I'm going to get the spirit troll. Oh, let's see here. Everything's good. Just doing some cooking and saw you were live. Oh, cool. Making anything good? What was I looking for? Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Alright. And I'm looking for the spirit troll. 244. Curious. Oh, the Udak. Okay. Before I get into that, I will certainly throw that on. So let's see here. The Udak from EGW. Alright, let's find that one. Oh, wow. Look at that. Jumped right on it. Alright, let's see what we got here. Oh, Lord. Look at this thing. Alright, it's a siege monster. Cool. Alright, we have another gargantuan monster, and it's supposed to be a 16. Let's see how this one works out. Alright, going back to the tool. We'll reset that and get looking at the Udak. Or is it Udak? I don't know. Okay, the Udak. I just messed that up horribly. The Udak. It is a gargantuan monster, which is insane when you think about how big these things really are when they hit gargantuan. Making some meal prep for the week. Black beans, pickled red onions, cabbage, lime slaw. Oh, sounds good. Cool. Alright, our Udak It has an AC of 18 and a hit dice of 10d20 plus 22 Constitution, 11 Wisdom, and 10 Charisma. And we should be seeing a 16 for its CR rating. All right, looking down into its skills area, we have 2 saving throws, which isn't going to modify anything because our saving throws base is 0 to 2, so it gets no bonuses there. It's vulnerable to thunder, which is surprising. We don't see too many vulnerabilities, and the fact that it's also thunder is really shocking. No pun intended. Or maybe it was, I don't know. But we do have 1, 2, 3, 4 conditions for our damage immunity, so we will add that in for our Udak. And that's only going to give us a 1.5 times multiplier, which is good because after bumping up to probably a CR 17, it would only get 1.25 times the modifier. Alright, and then we have conditions, senses, and languages, which we don't care about. But the Udak does have charge. And if the Udak moves at least 20 feet towards a target and then hits it with a slam attack on the same turn, the target takes an extra 27 points of bludgeoning damage and then is pushed or knocked prone or whatever. So we'll come over here into the trait section and add in the, 27 points of damage for charge. And that will be more or less applied to every round of combat. So right off the bat, charge, if your monster ever has it, is expected to be doing that every time. So if your Udak is being swarmed by melee and there is a player out in the distance that can be charged, go charge it. Especially with these damage immunities, there's a good chance that it will not either take damage or it has enough hit points to survive that. I mean, we're already looking at effective 247 points of hit points. Alright, next we will take a look at the... I think we're done with the traits. Yeah, the only other trait would be Siege Monster. And that doesn't matter for terms of calculating the CR because it only deals double damage to structures. We'll move down into the actions of the Udak. And we have another Swallow. Fun. Alright. First off, we have a Bite from the Udak, which is going to deal 13 to hit and then 21 points of damage. And also grapples a target. Alright. So the Bite will grapple. And we'll come back over here and add that into the monster traits for Constrict. Giving it an effective AC of 19 now. And then back over in the workspace, we also have Slam. Which is going to be 21.5 points of damage because it's 3d8 and it's an odd number amount of dice for damage. And no other effects. And then we have a Swallow. And the Udak makes 1 bite attack against a large creature or smaller in its grapple that it's grappling. And then we'll deal 21 points of acid damage. Alright, so we're going to put the Swallow damage into attack 3 since Swallow from the trait, as anyone watching this as a VOD will have seen that the damage wasn't working out quite the way we were expecting to. Alright, so Swallow... The acid damage from Swallow is going to be in attack number 3. And we will go into the multi-attack now. The multi-attack is going to be 1 bite and 2 slams. So we're going to add in the 1 bite plus 2 of the slams. For a multi-attack total of 64 points of damage. Already looking pretty good. And then on top of that, it can swallow creatures. So a swallowed creature is blinded and restrained. It has total cover against attacks and other effects outside the Udak. And then, let's see here. If the Udak takes a number of damage. Let's see if the attack... It doesn't look like it has any limit to the amount of creatures it can swallow, especially since it's gargantuan. So we can at least get 2 swallowed creatures in roughly the first couple rounds of combat, in theory. So because of that, we're going to have basically a repeat from the last monster with the Udak. We're going to have our multi-attack here, and that's going to be for... Oops, let's not put those here in the legendary actions. Let's put those down into the rounds of combat. And we'll have 64 across the board here. And then on top of that, we're going to start adding in the swallow damage. So... Round 2 is when the Udak will start dealing swallow damage from the acid. And we get to add in 1 round of acid damage. And then if the Udak also swallows a second creature, we're going to start getting multiple amounts of swallow damage while it's also biting and slamming other creatures outside of its body. And Vanderi said, yeah, it's a beefy boy. I see that. It's pretty beefy so far. This thing is gnarly. All right, so let's add in 2 more points of acid damage for the first and second targets. And we're looking at a total of 85 points of damage. This is fascinating because we're looking at a CR 14 again, and there's nothing here that is really saying, all right, this is going to be lower. Let me take a look at the charge here. Add the damage noted in trait to one of the creature's attacks. All right. I think this needs to be fixed because they're expecting this to be done every round. So this is only being applied once for charge. So let's take this off here and add this in as attack number 4 and say that our Udak is running around charging everything for 27 points of damage. So round 1, it's going to charge the furthest target and get in charge damage. And then it's going to charge something else far away and get even more damage in. And then on top of that, we will do this once more here. Yeah, Vanderi is saying, that's the feeling I had. It doesn't seem as damaging as the CR implied. Well, now we're looking at full attack of 112. But we're still at CR 14, so maybe I gotta look at the calculations in the back, but I'll do that at another time for the charge to see if that was being calculated incorrectly or not. Oh, I know what I'm missing. Silly me. The 2 hit. Oh, and its 2 hit is plus 13. All right, 13. There we go. Now that I have the 2 hit properly aligned to plus 13, our Udak is a CR 16. I'm going to have to go back and look at the previous monster, which was the core spawn worm. I think the core spawn worm I said was overrated. It probably is even now because, oh no, because it doesn't have charge. So the core spawn worm is probably still overrated. Just kind of thinking out loud right now. All right, so our Udak is an evenly balanced monster, which is awesome. Thank you for recommending this, Vanderi. I'm going to add that into my chart here. And probably throw that in since I've already gone over it to the next week's monsters. All right. And we're looking at Udak and this one here, and we found, what was the numbers? 13, 19, 16. Cool. 13, 19, 16. So yeah, this does a lot of damage. A little under for the... oh, you know what? A little under for its defenses, but it's really heavy-handed on the attacks. So for its notes, charge is expected every round of combat. You're welcome. Do you have any other recommendations for monsters? Otherwise, I will move on to what I have on my sheet here. Because next I was going to look at the Spirit Troll, which was another request. Alright, let me go over while I wait to see if Vanderi has anything else. I'm going to reset my sheet. And, oh yeah, I got to take a note of fixing those things here, so let's see. Alright, monster calculations. Relations, bugs, to fix. Let's see, to fig. Yes. Check charge trait for ×3 multiplier. Look over swallow for multiple rounds of combat. Let's see here. Vandari said, if you can take a look at the Aeorian monster, that'd be awesome, unless you have already, which I haven't. Also, I want to use them in the game soon, since my group is going to where they would show up. Another one from Eberron's, or not Eberron's, damn it. Explorer's Guide. Another one from Explorer's Guide. Okay. Alright, that's that note there. Yeah, sure, I can definitely take a look at the Aeorian. Might as well. I mean, you're here watching along? Let's take a look at some monsters. Make sure they are properly balanced. Alright, so the Aeorian. Alright, so I guess it's the Aeorian Hunters. I don't know if there's any others here. Uh, 282, so let's go to 283. Oh, there are a bunch. Do you have anyone in particular? Specifically the Nullifier. Okay, cool. Thank you. Oh, perfect. It's right here. Do we have... Oh, here's the Nullifier. Okay. So the Nullifier is... Oh, Lord, that's a lot of mouths. Oh, man. Oh, this is the first time I've been looking at this book in detail, and that is a disturbing monster. Wow. Jeez. All right, let's take a look at this. This monstrosity is definitely, yeah, definitely a lack of a better term, I would say. That is one heck of a monstrosity. Wow. All right, so this is a large monstrosity, and it's got a total of 17 AC with 19 D10 hit points for Constitution, with a Constitution bonus of 18, 14 Wisdom, 18 Charisma. And it should be a CR 12. Alright. Now let's take a look at our skill section. We have 2 saving throws. Doesn't matter, as I mentioned before in the other 2 monsters. Skills don't matter. Damage immunities. We only have 2. So for the time being, we're going to ignore the Radiant and Necrotic. We'll come back to that if for some reason we seem to be overrated or underrated. More than likely overrated. And come down and take a look at its skills area. So we have Horrid Gnashing. Let's take a look at this together. The Nullifier's mouth gnashes incoherently. While it can see any enemies, each creature that starts its turn within 20 feet of the Nullifier can hear it, must make a DC 16 Wisdom saving throw. Unless the save succeeds, the creature rolls a D8 to determine what it does during the current turn. The creature is stunned. It's a stun condition, so we don't worry about that. The creature is frightened. That could be something, especially since it's a CR 12. But it's only going to come into play, what is that, 25% of the time? So it's not guaranteed. And then 7 to 8, the creature doesn't move, basically immobilized. And it uses its actions to make 1 melee attack against a random creature other than itself if one is within reach. Otherwise, it does nothing. All right. For the time being, I'm going to say there's really no way to guarantee any of these. And we're going to move on from this for the time being. But we do have some innate spellcasting, and we have At Will Counterspell. Wow. At Will for reaction. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Detect Magic, Dispel Magic, See Invisibility, and Anti-Magic Field. All right. Nothing we really have to worry about in terms of calculating its CR. So that's some good news. And then we'll just move on to magic resistance, and the Nullifier has advantage on saving throws against spells and other effects. So this is a legit just anti-mage. This isn't a mage killer, it's just anti-mage. This is, oh, it's in the name, Nullifier, all right? Duh, of course. So we'll go down here and throw on the magic resistance. And so far we're only at a DCR of 9. Let's see where our multi-attacks and the reaction go. So first off, let's just jump down to reactions. Counterspell. The Nullifier attempts to interrupt a creature that it can see within 60 feet in the process of casting a spell. If the creature is casting a spell 3rd or lower, its spell fails. Alright, so this is just basically Counterspell, but it can just do it once per turn. All right, that's cool. Vandari said, it's a massive middle finger to spellcasters who think they are the only ones who can use Counterspell, and I love it. Yeah, this sounds like it's going to be fun once I transition any of my campaigns away from demons and fiends into more monstrosities. I gotta remember this one. This is dirty. This is a dirty monster for spellcasters. Oh, man. Alright, so we don't have to worry about the reaction. Let's take a look at its actions and go over to the workspace here. Alright, we have a multi-attack. The nullifier can make 3 attacks, 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. It implies bites. I know it's got multiple mouths, but really. Also at will dispel. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oof. Wow. That is... Yeah, I mean, I looked at that, I saw that, and it just didn't make the connection that, oh, it's at will. I can just keep doing it. Boy, yeah. Okay. Whoever came up with that was a dirty, was a mean person. This is a mean monster. Alright, multi-attack. 1 with its bites, 2 with its claws. So its bite can do, let's see here, 17 piercing damage plus 11 force damage. Wow, force damage. Okay. So we have 17 there plus 11 there for a total of 28 from its bites. Interesting. And then its claws. Let's see here. The claws will deal 11 slashing plus an additional 11 force, and the target is grappled if it's a creature. The nullifier has 2 claws, each of which can grapple 1 creature. In theory, because it can grapple 2 creatures, we should technically apply the constrict twice. I'm going to keep that in mind if the monster doesn't quite work out to where we're expecting it to be. So if that's the case, I'm going to add in another AC modification here and see if that has anything to do with it. Alright, now for our multi-attack. The multi-attack is 1 bite plus 2 of its claws. And we have a total of 72 points of damage. Alright, not terrible here. There's really nothing else to worry about. So our total amount of damage is 72. Alright, we're supposed to be a CR 12, but so far we're seeing CR 10 from the green zone here. Curious. Now I know adding in 1 more AC isn't going to bump it up to a 12. Let's see here. What can I add for 1 AC? What was that? Pack Tactic? No, that's that. Parry. Parry is what I usually use. That will give us the extra +1 because it can grapple 2 targets at once. Wow, that didn't do anything. It's still... Okay, let's double check this. Alright. Oh, that's why. I see now. Alright, so we have a 21. Yeah. Alright. Alright, so our effective hit points is 180. And that puts us into a DCR of 8, expecting AC 16. Regardless if it grapples 1 or 2 targets, this is only putting us at an effective AC of 20 or 21. And because that's either 4 or 5 over the expected, that's going to result in a +2 shift from DCR 8 to 10. So that's why, even though it can grapple up to 2 targets and potentially get +2 effective AC bonuses because of grappling twice, we're not seeing any kind of a shift. So, excuse me for that really drawn out so there. What we're kind of looking at here is that there's something probably here in the horrid gnashing. And just for the heck of it, let me see also what would happen if we moved and threw in the damage immunities. Just for the heck of it, because generally I don't unless there's 3 traits or more. Alright. This is probably where the confusion may be. I don't consider damage immunities unless there's 3 or more. It's tough to say, especially since these are very unique damage immunities with Radiant and Necrotic. They're not very commonly found. I mean, sure, there are a few spells that are going to be dealing those, but generally speaking, players want fire, cold, or lightning most of the time. I mean, I know there's Toll the Dead, which is that great cantrip that does necrotic damage, and you've got Sacred Flame, which will do radiant damage, I believe. I'm losing a little off track here with Radiant's, the Radiant spell damage there. Sacred Flames spell damage, thank you. There it is. So, I think this was an error, because they added in the damage immunities, and there's only 2 conditions. In theory, this should be a CR12, but because I don't add in immunities if there's less than 3 conditions, I'm saying this Nemesis is actually a CR10. That's what I'm going to go with. I'm sticking with that, and unfortunately there's really no way to count in any of the innate spells that it can use except for just being a jerk. And on top of that, the Horrid Gnashing probably could do something. So for instance, if a player is affected by the fear, then we could add in the fear presence, which still won't really move it anywhere because it's over CR10. So the frightful presence of 5 and 6 won't really do anything. And there's really nothing for being stunned. I mean, this is a great condition to have from the Horrid Gnashing of 7 and 8, having your players randomly attack someone that's close to it, or, you know, whatever's close to it. But, you know, the stun condition, technically, if you watch or listen to the earlier part of my video and the first monster, I talked about conditions other than grappled and restrained. There's no way to calculate this in. Look at the nullifier ability before. Which one am I looking at? Oh, the another Aeorian? I'm lost as to which one you're trying to point me to. The Reverser. Okay, I will look for that in a moment here. Let me take note of this, and I'll throw this in. This was a Aeorian nullifier. It's supposed to be a 12 from EGW. Here. So we got 10, 9, 10. 10, 9, 10. Overrated. Appears immunities may have been added in with only 2 conditions. Alright. Cool. Yes. I will take a look at the Aeorian Reverser now, since I am done looking at the Nullifier, and that was a heck of a monstrosity. So we have the Absorber, and we have the Reverser here with the Blood Hunter. Cool. Do we have... Oh, the Reverser must be this one up here, right? Yeah, alright. Well, that's an interesting monster. I'm surprised there's not more of these. Alright. Come on. Throw this in here. This is also supposed to be a CR8. Reverser. EGW. Cool. Alright, let's see. Let's reset this and take a look at the Reverser. Alright, Aeorian Reverser. This is a large monstrosity with 15 AC and 14 D10 hit points with an additional 18 Constitution, 14 Wisdom, and 8 Charisma. And it should be a CR8. Alright, next going down into the skills area, we have 2 saving throws, so we don't worry about that. Nothing to worry about with the skills. Damage immunities, again, this may become a problem here. Because of the Radiant and Necrotic, we may see this accidentally added in, and nothing else really matters here. Again, we have magic resistance for that, and then nothing else for the for traits. So let's take a look at the reaction just for the heck of it for the reversal. When a creature the Reverser can see within 30 feet of it regains hit points, the Reverser reduces the number of hit points regained to 0, and the Reverser deals 13 force damage to the creature. Curious. Okay. that won't happen all the time, but we may need to add that in. So we will take a look at the reaction that it can do every round, potentially, and start adding in the 13 extra force damage as well. So let's come over to the the workspace section and start taking a look at its actions. All right, multi-attack. 3 multi-attacks, 1 bite, 2 claws. So we have kind of a rinse repeat here. And, oh, did I not add in? I wonder if I didn't add in the attack bonus for the last monster. I'm going to have to double check that once again. +8. I have a bad feeling I didn't add that in. Oh, goodness. You know what? Can I... I can. Okay. And I didn't. All right, we're taking a step back to look at the nullifier. I didn't add in the attack bonus. I gotta really be careful about that. Let's add in the +8 to attack bonus. All right. The nullifier is now only 1 off because I didn't add in the attack bonus. So it's not too far off, but something to take note of. All right, that was super helpful. And what was that, 12? Let me fix this real quick and we'll go back to the reversal. 10, 11, 11. Alright, unfortunately I have to add everything back in for the reverser. And I'll just do that quick, since I had to back up a bit. But thankfully, I was able to backtrack that, which was helpful. 14, 18, and this should be an 8. Alright, and it has magic resistance. And now we're back over to here. So before I forget, we're going to add in the +8 to hit for the reverser. And now let's look at the multi-attacks here. So 1 bite, 2 claws. And it can deal 11.5 damage from its piercing damage, plus an additional 6.5 force damage. And then its claws will deal 8.5 and 7 force damage. And we can do that twice. So we're looking at 1 bite plus 2 claws for a total of 49 points of damage. And that's pretty much it for our reverser here. Oops. Let's get rid of that and push that there. Alright, we're looking at a little bit of damage, but because healers got to heal, we're going to add in the damage as well. And let's see here, where could we add that in? That would make sense. We'll throw that in. Let's see what happens with the angelic weapon. We'll throw that in there because technically it could be doing that every round for an additional 13 points of damage. Alright, so it looks like we have our CR8 monster for the reverser. If provided the party is constantly healing every round, at least once, it can do the reaction to deal an extra amount of force damage to a creature. We have our CR8. If the players catch on, though, and the reverser can't reverse the healing, we then have a CR7 reverser. But right out the gate for the first 3 rounds of combat, and the monsters start dealing a lot of damage, especially if there's more than just the reverser by itself, we're going to see this probably sticking at around a CR8, no problem. Alright, so yeah, our reverser is a CR8. The nullifier technically, I believe, is overrated at CR11, since I fixed that. And yeah, there we go. The absorber. That might take a little bit of time to look at something else. Alright, so there you go, Vanderi. We have the reverser added CR8, provided it's not being, provided it can constantly reverse the healing. The nullifier seems to be a little overrated, And the Udak was a big old chunky boy. Let's see here. So we have 6, 9, 8 for that monster. Reverser. 6, 9. I want that there. 8. Even. Alright. I'm not going to worry about notes there. You're welcome. Alright, and I've got a few minutes left here. I think because I already have it set up, let's just take a look at the Spirit Troll since it was a requested monster. And I've got a little bit of time left. Alright. The Spirit Troll, a large giant. It has 17 AC with 15 D10 and 13 Constitution. 9 Wisdom, 16 Charisma. Don't really care about that. And it should be a CR 11. Looking into the skills area, we have skills from Perception, doesn't matter. Damage resistance of Acid, Cold, Fire, and Lightning, but we also have damage immunities. So we're going to go with immunities first. Because if we do resistance, it's going to drop it down a little bit. So since we have the conditions for damage immunities, let's use the higher one first. Next, we will look at incorporeal movement. Actually doesn't make any difference, so we will skip over that one, and then look at regeneration. And our troll will regain 10 hit points at the start of its turn, unless it takes psychic or force damage. Huh, look at that. Alright, so coming down to regeneration in the trait section, it's going to regen 10 hit points per turn, giving an effective plus 30 hit points, bumping its DCR up to an 8. And then we will take a look at its multi-attack, and this is going to be pretty fast because there's not much here for its multi-attack. First, we have a bite of plus 7 to hit, and before I forget to throw that in, let's add in the bonus to hit for 7. And its bite will be, let's see here, 19.5 psychic damage, and the target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be stunned. Because it's stunned and it's a condition that may not apply right away, we aren't counting in the stun. And then claws. That is going to be 14 points of psychic damage as well. And then, let's see here. For the multi-attack, it makes 3 attacks, 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. A lot of rinse-repeat here, I'm seeing. So 1 of those and 2 of these. Oops. Hate it when I do that. For a total of 47.5 damage. Great. So we will add that in here. Come on. Getting ahead of myself. And we are looking at, after everything, the Spirit Troll is, not a CR8. CR8 monster. It's supposed to be CR11. That's really fascinating because I've added in everything I could possibly add in for this monster. Is there... No, the next thing is the Venom Troll. Wow. Ooh, that is really overrated. Holy cow. Because the only other thing I could do is change it from damage immunities to resistance, and that's only going to drop it down a little further. Did I miss? Oh, no, it's stunned. I didn't miss anything there. 1 with its bite, 2 with its claws. Yeah, which is what I did. 7 to hit. Wow, okay, this is very overrated. I mean, we're looking at a total of 4 points overrated in CR value here. I mean, maybe they're considering special conditions because of the requiring force or psychic damage to stop the regeneration. Yes, I did, Vandaria. I added in, like, immediately, right when I got into the action section because, you know, the last couple times I've been failing to do so. Alright, let's see here. Or be stunned, but that doesn't really matter. We don't count stunning. Incorporeal movement really isn't going to do anything. Wow, alright. Yeah, there's really nothing I can do about this to try and say like, oh, it's this. Let me just double check my numbers while we have a couple minutes left here. Alright, so effective 175, which puts us at a DCR 7 with 15 AC. It only has 17, so that's going to result in a +1 bonus, which we see here. And then its damage is only going to be a total of 47. I think this thing needs a lot more damage in order to really rank it up to the CR11. I mean, a lot more damage. And we have 47 points of damage falling in the middle of a OCR 7, expecting attack bonus 6. It's only 7 over, so there's going to be no movement, so we're looking at an OCR of 7. Yeah, so that works out to be an 8, because it'll end up being 7.5 for the average, and then that just rounds up to 8. Wow. Okay, that is really overrated. I haven't seen one so overrated before, except out of maybe the Creature Codex. Nothing against them, against the Creature Codex. I like the book and I like all the monsters, but they seemed to be pumped out too fast. Alright, Spirit Troll. Let's see here. Spirit Troll, what did I say? It was 878 for overrated. And then my notes, I have no idea. Alright, well, that's the Spirit Troll. It's supposed to be a CR11, but it's actually a CR8, unless we are taking in special considerations for the regen, because it takes psychic or force damage to stop the regeneration. Wow. I mean, psychic is very rare, and there aren't too terribly many spells that I'm aware of that do force damage, so you've got me on that one. Alright, well, this has been another live stream of exposing D&D 5e monsters live. Let's see here. Vanderi, thank you for joining me as we looked over a bunch of monsters, especially some really fun ones from the Explorer's Guide that I haven't seen before. I have the book, as you can see, I just really haven't pulled any monsters from it yet. Yeah. Those were some fun monsters. I liked the 2 gargantuan ones. Those were absurd. And it'd be fun to throw those at my players at some point. Try and build out some kind of an encounter specifically to pull those in, just for the fun of it, as like a crazy epic encounter or something. Which would be fun. Well then, we've only got a couple minutes left before the end of the stream. And once again, I'd like to thank Vanderi for joining me on the live stream, and anyone else that is watching this in the future. I thank you, and enjoy the rest of your night.